Today, the great Barack Obama, the hero of the left, the hero of the Democratic Party, the man who gets up and speaks, it's, oh my God, Black Jesus is in the house today, right? He goes and campaigns, and this is the worst loss of his career, my opinion. This is what I think. Worst loss of his, I think the worst night of his life was November 5th, November 6th, midnight. Worst day of his career. Horrible. You're seeing right now speculation with him, Jennifer Aniston. His wife wasn't at the Jimmy Carter, funeral.
Curiosity about the case, and now Donald J. Trump is asking his Department of Justice to show full transparency, and somehow that's a criticism of Donald J. Trump and not Barack Obama and George W. Bush. If you want to criticize the people who aren't showing full transparency, you ought to go after the administrations that went easy on Jeffrey Epstein, the administrations...
The tale of a leader who promised the moon but delivered nothing more than fading shadows has turned into one of the greatest political illusions of our time. Built on soaring speeches and fueled by endless media praise, his image seemed untouchable until reality finally caught up. That's where Patrick Bet-David and JD Vance step in, ripping apart the glossy facade to reveal Barack Obama, not as the flawless visionary he once sold himself to be, but as a master of branding who thrived on style over substance.
But think you're Obama, okay? First go from the Obama's lens.
Okay.
Obamas are sitting there having to hear people compare Kamala to Obama.
Crazy.
Do you know what that does to Obama? Do you know Obama is sitting there saying, shut the, that's what Obama's saying internally, right?
First of all, I don't believe, whether you agree with me or disagree with me, whether you agree with Donald Trump or disagree with him, I don't believe in hectoring voters. I believe in persuading voters. Support is not something I'm given or something I'm owed. It's something you got to go out there and work for. So one, I just don't like the tone of going in. I mean, look, the better question for Barack Obama or anybody to ask is not why black men, it's not how dare you not vote for Kamala Harris. It's maybe they're thinking about voting for Donald Trump because they're sick of being censored. They're sick of...
The myth of Obama's greatness was never built on results. It was built on performance. Patrick Bet-David wastes no time tearing through that polished facade, exposing how the so-called visionary spent 8 years running America like it was a never-ending TED Talk. All words, no delivery. Sure, he could light up a room with flawless speeches, but the fine print of his record told a darker truth. Wars dragged on, the middle class kept shrinking, and the divisions he vowed to heal only split deeper, leaving scars that never closed. It's the oldest trick in politics. Sell hope, deliver red tape, and when the promises fall apart, hide behind eloquence that sounds better than the reality ever was.
Go back to it. You can do that. We don't have to agree politically. I still want to find a way for us to be able to hear each other out and disagree on policies, and I want to see them be together. I don't root for them to not make it. You want to see them make it. However, body language, these guys haven't been living together for a long time. I mean, when he's going and having breakfast with his girls and the wife is not there and he's going to funerals and traditional presidential, things that you have to be a part of, and she's not there at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Maybe not Trump's, I get it, but Carter's.
JD Vance sharpens the attack by dismantling Obama's carefully crafted image as a transformational leader. In Vance's view, the only thing Obama truly transformed was the Democratic Party, turning it into a celebrity fan club where style always outranked substance. He reminds us that the man's biggest achievement wasn't some lasting reform, but a healthcare law so tangled and unpopular, it turned into a political punching bag for the next decade. And instead of bringing Americans together, Obama presided over an era that ignited the populist backlash, still shaping politics today. Far from being the nation's savior, he became the spark that fueled the chaos to come.
I think the only thing the far left really responds to is power. The thing that they're actually going to be responsive to is the recognition that there are consequences on the other side. If they get off scot-free, if they're never investigated, if they're never prosecuted when they violated the law, then they're just going to come back and do the exact same thing again. And there are a few different ways, of course. So it's the big tech companies that were censoring conservatives. They've got to know that's not going to be allowed.
Bet-David digs even deeper into Obama's obsession with legacy.
exposing how much of his presidency was fueled by the fear of being forgotten. Every move seemed less about solving problems and more about carving a monument to himself. From perfectly staged photo ops to choreographed interviews, the White House often looked more like a Netflix set than a functioning administration. The irony? In trying so hard to script his own greatness, Obama ended up revealing just how shallow it really was. Because for all the glossy magazine covers and best-selling books, the actual scoreboard of progress remains embarrassingly thin.
She sounds like the way MAGA feels with Trump when he talks about Epstein. How upset they are at Trump about Epstein. The Democrats are upset at Obama because they're saying you're doing this. They're putting the responsibility on him, right? On the messaging here. Adam, your thoughts on this when you see, what Whoopi, Obama...
Vance piles on by exposing how Obama's foreign policy blunders weren't just mistakes. They were full-blown disasters. From the infamous Red Line debacle in Syria to the catastrophic mess in Libya, Obama mastered the art of leading from behind, an approach that left allies baffled and enemies emboldened. The world soon saw that behind the soaring speeches stood a man more focused on guarding his personal brand than projecting real strength. And the cost of that weakness? A more unstable, dangerous world that's still paying the price today.
For 4 years, under Joe Biden's Department of Justice, the media didn't give a damn about the Epstein files or about the Epstein case. For literally 20 years, the story about this scumbag, and he is a scumbag pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein, he's dead now, but for 20 years, you had Obama and George W. Bush's Department of Justice go easy on this guy. They didn't fully investigate the...
Patrick Bet-David exposes the cultural myth of Obama's presidency. Sure, he was the cool president with Spotify playlists, celebrity cameos, late-night skits, but behind the hype, ordinary Americans were left behind. Coolness made him a star, not an effective leader. As Bet-David says, the presidency isn't a fashion show, it's about results. By that standard, Obama looks less like a legend and more like an empty suit with slick marketing. JD Vance drives it further, showing how Obama's elitism poisoned his politics. Because for all the talk of empathy, his presidency played like a performance for an audience that could afford the tickets.
Visually, he's changed. I like to say visually as opposed to from the look standpoint, because of course looks don't matter anymore in politics. Looks don't matter. It doesn't make any difference, right? Because we want to be politically correct, but they do matter. But he's changed. His look has changed actually quite a bit. I haven't seen him in a long time.
And by the way, Rob, I think that's even 4 years ago. I think it's even more than it is
Well,
today.
no, but the statement he just made was a couple of days ago. And
it was a couple of days ago. And it's similar to the statement he made back in 2012 when he told business owners, you didn't build that. Remember when he said that? I don't know if you remember that whole comment. I think this is the speech, Rob, if you want to play this.
You got a business. That you didn't build that. Somebody else made that happen.
This becomes a pattern of...
David doesn't let Obama slide on the economy. He shatters the myth of recovery, pointing out it was one of the weakest in modern history. Stagnant middle class, crawling job growth, and skyrocketing debt. What the media called brilliance looked more like luck and nonstop money printing. Meanwhile, struggling Americans weren't buying it. JD Vance then hits the hypocrisy. Obama built a career preaching unity while quietly feeding division. And in the end, he left the country more bitterly fractured than ever.
You guys saw the recent movie, Leave the World Behind. Anybody saw that movie there? Oh, okay, yeah, all these... Am I watching a movie or is this a documentary realistic thing? And then I'm seeing Mark Zuckerberg just spent $100 million building a house in Hawaii with a nuclear bunker. What does he know that the rest of the world doesn't know about? Talk about the timing. Oh, accidentally, coincidentally, a week after that movie comes out, a new movie comes out. What's the name of that movie? Civil War. Leave the world behind. Our power grid in America hasn't been updated. 75% of it hasn't been updated in 50 years. And you're kind of talking about that. Then you're pinning whites against blacks. There's a line in the movie that says, Dad, if something goes down, we can't trust these white people. I know that's something both you and Mom agree on. Why do you put that line in the movie, Barack? And you were helping.
Patrick Bet-David rips away the polished image to reveal the truth. Obama wasn't a leader.
he was a performer. His gift wasn't governing, it was selling. Selling hope, selling change, selling himself. But when the cameras shut off and the applause died, the emptiness of that pitch was impossible to ignore. His presidency was branding over results, and that's why his legacy, despite the fanfare, feels more like a mirage than a monument.
Obama office responds to Trump's accusation of treason outrageous. Let me read this to you, and Thomas Ellsworth, I'm coming to you first, so please be prepared with all your notes.
Ready.
Obama's office spokesperson, Patrick Rodenbush, great first name, rejected the office of the Director of National Intelligence. Reports claim that senior Obama administration officials orchestrated the Russia collusion hoax, stating, out of respect for the office of the presidency, our office does not normally dignify the constant nonsense and misinformation flowing out of this White House.
This isn't just about tearing down a politician. It's about shattering a myth sold for far too long. Obama dreamed of being remembered as the man who redefined history. But when the smoke clears, he looks less like a visionary and more like a performer who mastered presentation while fumbling leadership. Bet-David and Vance ripped through the glossy packaging to reveal the truth. Obama wasn't a revolution in a suit, he was a Netflix trailer stretched into 8 years of hype. The promise of unity collapsed into deeper division, the hope of renewal sank into a weak recovery, and the call for accountability drowned in excuses.
The one thing I wanted to show is the following. So you know how you talked about Jerome Powell, what an easy job. You come once a month and he said we're going to increase the rates.
Greatest job there is.
I think this is the one thing they don't talk about. So Barack Obama got elected November 4th. Okay, quantitative easing started November 26th.
Right.
And it stayed for 8 years until you got elected.
Right.
So if you look at that low, pretty much 0% interest rate,
Right.
and then you get elected, right? If you go to January 2016, Rob, for the audience to see that. And then from there, one by one, rates are going up. And then Biden comes in, goes back down to zero to try to save the economy. And then, the rest is obviously history.
Right.
But do you think the average person knows, like, the impact of going to 0%? How much does that positively help the impact?
Obama's strength was always presentation, but even that wore thin as voters realized they were watching the same script on repeat, a theater of inspiration masking stagnation. Bet-David exposes how Obama's detachment made him more a commentator than a commander. He wasn't in the trenches leading change, he was in the balcony narrating struggle. When America demanded bold action, he offered half steps. His so-called crown jewel, healthcare reform, became a bureaucratic maze where premiums soared and promises vanished. Families faced higher costs, fewer options, all sold as historic. And on foreign policy? No better. Obama branded himself a peacemaker, but the results told a different story.
I'm going to go to the next topic here, which is Adam's top topic, talking about Obama saying every man needs a gay friend. So Obama goes
Barack,
on his wife's podcast, okay? And they're sitting there having this conversation, and it opens, they covered a lot of different things. Right off the bat, they talked about the divorce. Hey, aren't we supposed to be getting a divorce and all this stuff? Just tell me if this seems like they woke up together in the same bed this morning, the last week.
Libya collapsed into chaos. Syria turned into a humanitarian nightmare, and Obama's infamous red line dissolved into fog. His White House mastered the trick of sounding decisive while staying frozen in action. As Patrick Bet-David points out, this wasn't caution, it was paralysis dressed up as wisdom. JD Vance digs deeper, exposing the hypocrisy. The man who promised to lift the working class instead catered to elite circles, pouring his energy into media spots, celebrity praise, and academic applause. In the end, Obama wasn't a champion of the poor, he became a cultural celebrity.
The last point I want to make is, I got to say, and shocker, newsflash here, I've defended Kamala Harris once, I'm about to defend Barack Obama once. So set to the side the hectoring and the tone of Obama when he went in and talking about black voters, like whatever. Obviously, I just criticized that. You know what I was watching him talk? You know what I thought to myself is, agree or disagree, and obviously I disagreed with about 99% of what he did when he was in office, he had substance, and Kamala Harris.
Netflix deals, memoir tours, and staged appearances defined a man more focused on branding than leading. The irony is brutal. The president who warned against celebrity politics became its biggest star. JD Vance mocks the gap between promises and reality. Obama vowed transparency, but delivered IRS scandals and Benghazi stonewalling. He vowed unity, but left America more divided than ever, fueling the very populism he claimed to resist. Far from curing division, he accelerated it, soothing crowds with words while deepening distrust. Patrick Bet-David drives it home. Obama preached fairness, but oversaw a Wall Street recovery that left workers behind.
Banks, the president is really preoccupied with this, and rightfully so. And of course, you've got to pay the lawfare back in kind. You've got to say to the Comeys and the Brennans of the world, of course, you got to follow the law. You can only prosecute people when they actually broke the law, but we know that a lot of people broke the law in the last administration, and they've got to face real justice, not just words, not just getting hauled before a committee in Capitol Hill. If people broke the law.
The banks were saved, the elites thrived, and Wall Street soared, but ordinary families saw nothing but stagnation. Hope and change never reached the kitchen table. Instead, the gap widened between the America Obama glamorized in speeches and the one living paycheck to paycheck. JD Vance mocks Obama's obsession with legacy, noting he cared more about how history books described him than about the consequences of his choices. But history doesn't lie. Obamacare is still polarizing. Foreign crises fueled distrust, and unity collapsed into fractures. The myth of Obama as a transformative leader survives only in elite narratives that confuse eloquence with effectiveness. Patrick Bet-David cuts through the illusion, showing his presidency was built on perception, not results. Together, Bet-David and Vance strip away the polish to reveal a hollow core, applause mistaken for achievement, leaving behind not transformation, but frustration.